What's going on, my good people here? Just a quick vid. Wanted to mention, of course, we're in November now, but on the 31st, we had the birthday of Les Darcy, the great Australian middleweight, former Australian middleweight champion and Australian heavyweight champion, which speaks to just the depth of the fighter himself. Les Darcy from Maitland, Australia. They called him the Maitland Wonder, and he got that name because he was indeed a wonder. He was one of those guys who was arguably ahead of his time in some sense, because he was just able to do some amazing things at a very young age. And by that, I mean he was able to knock out grown men even as he was a teenager. That's a highlight of him. He had the endurance, he had the power, he had the ability to fight on the inside, outside game as well, but could certainly apply his trade in proper fashion on the inside. And he was just one of those remarkable fighters. Shout out to my man Brian Duncan, writer of The Ice Punch, who initially put me on this great fighter. Now, Les Darcy, he was born on October 31st. And he died in May at the age of 21. He had not too long turned 21, as a matter of fact. And wish that, he was on such a high trajectory that all of that got spoiled in some sense. But he was still able to make his mark, leave his mark, make a name for himself regardless of such, because he was top just names on his resume, from Eddie McGordy, George Chip, Jeff Smith, the Bayonne Globetrotter. I mean, you name it. He had a hell of a resume, and he was probably someone that would eventually clashed with Harry Greb in what would have been probably one of, if not the greatest middleweight contest to that point in boxing history. Certainly ranks amongst them. It's kind of hard to say one is so much greater than the other if it didn't happen, but just stylistically on paper, one hell of a matchup, no question about it. And it would have been an exciting one to see, because it would have most certainly been filmed. Now, when Les Darcy, he came to the United States right before he died, and his intent was to gain the world middleweight title. He at the time was the Australian middleweight champion, and that held pretty much just as much, if not more weight at the time than the world middleweight title, given that he had fought a number of the best and some guys that were champions or future champions to that point, all by the age of 21. So he would have likely, it wouldn't have been a given, but they were more than likely being highly regarded as far as winning that world middleweight title. And as mentioned, the fight between he and Greb at some point down the road would have been amazing. Same as the case between he and Ketchel, Stanley Ketchel, who was a big time middleweight world champion. So Darcy was able to, do what he could do in the situation that he had. So he eventually, as mentioned, came here to the U.S., but he got an infection and died at the age of 21, as I indicated, very off. And he didn't even get a chance to fight while he was over here. He was essentially blackballed at one point in Australia due to conscription, because he was called to the military, and he left to go make a better name for his family. He came to the U.S., and they viewed him as a ducker, or whatever you want to call it, because he had left and didn't immediately join into the military, though he tried to serve when he got here in the United States. Now, he is widely regarded as a hero, top level guy at this point. So I understand the situation at hand. This was an opportunity he couldn't resist. So he tried to go and do something that would have been historic in the sport, but he was still able to become a historic fighter despite not getting that title and not getting to fight here in the US of A. That being said, hey, shout out to Les Darcy. There's a video on the channel. You can check it out. Just search Les Darcy 86 boxing or just Les Darcy in general, and I'd imagine that the video from the channel will pop up in the search bar. Google him. The video will likely pop up as well. But I want to let you know, so check that out and give me your thoughts on the great Les Darcy.